The Fallen Goddess scenario in 9 episodes. Episode 5, Impact Zone. Sophia's plunge into the galactic arms produces a bizarre, unforeseen effect. The impact of super-living pleromic luminosity on the Daima is extremely violent. Her torrential force splatters on the third arm like the surge of a fire hose hitting a sandy beach. But what blasts from the hose is more like cool, radiant, foaming lava than water. The material of the kenoma does not normally undergo an impact such as this. It causes the random star, planet, or comet in the affected region to bounce away, if it does not immediately disintegrate. This disruption is colossal, but it is the soot and ash in the granular cloud of the Daima that take the full brunt of the impact. Sophia at first cannot reckon what is happening. From the locale of the pleroma, she has observed many experiments, but none involving an aeon isolated in direct immersion in the Daima. She is momentarily dazed to find herself in the unknown territory of the galactic arms, where the conditions, laws, and properties of physics are different. Her plasmic substance is buoyant and porous, like foam, though infinitely dense. The density of the Daima is a new sensation. It is heavy and encumbering. The high compression induces a kind of paralysis that impedes her kinetic forces. And the illumination of space outside the pleroma is also an unknown event. Until now, the Aeon has never observed the light in the galactic arms by immediate proximity. It strikes her not like light, but a form of shadow that gleams and glitters with a metallic sheen, a hint of reptilian skin. She can hear no familiar sound. The glorious mantric chiming of the Aeons is absent. Instead, there is a raucous, Kirkhamambient pitch, like the screech of tearing metal. As her perception clears, the first thing Sophia sees is the impact crater resulting from her plunge. It looks like a huge bubble divided into 2 parts, one larger than the other. She is both in the bubble and, in some disturbing way, she is it. And the bubble also has bubbles. The sensation that she is covered with protrusions like warts jolts into her field of attention. Also, there is a darkening cast on her aeonic luminosity. Not at the interior, where total whiteness persists, but creeping around the edges of the impact zone. The feeling it gives her is somber and eerie. Now a spectacle of action emerges, spreading all around her, symmetrical waves that look frozen like metallic bands, yet they move. This is the ripple of her impact in the elementary matter of the Daima. The waves multiply in fractal repetition. Wherever the ripples spread, crest, and break, a shape appears, always the same shape, replicating itself. Not the shape of a living creature such as the countless animal types designed in the pleroma, rather a non-living creature that resembles an aborted fetus. The sight is weird and stilted, unlike anything even an Aeon might imagine. Yet Sophia recognizes in it the semblance of something she knows. The embryonic stage of the anthropos, the human creature she and Thelete designed in the pleroma. Arising endlessly from the fractal expansion of the impact zone, these forms ride the ripples, and simultaneously the ripples propagate the forms. As Sophia observes closely, the freakish embryo seems to morph into another shape, like a seahorse, as if the ripples were waves composed of seahorse shapes, with no difference between the waves and what rides them. This spectacle arouses total astonishment and brings Sophia to a heightened state of attention. For the first time, Sophia clearly registers the propagation of an inorganic species. Archons, Thus is the unintended effect of her lateral plunge into the galactic arms spontaneous generation of an inorganic species. With increasing power of attention, Sophia watches the spectacle around her shift, as if in response to being detected. With a rush like a rapid outgoing tide, the impact zone dissolves and she regains her torrential luminosity. In an instant, the fractal ocean of seahorse waves fades away. She is free and clear, rotating slowly at a dwell point in the galactic arms, not far from the Orion Nebula. At this location, she holds the ideal position to contemplate the object of her devoted interest, her designer species, the Anthropos. But Sophia is not spared a moment to dwell on that glorious sight, due to what happens next. The high-pitched metallic ring of her impact now returns amplified. She directs her attention to it and immediately locates its source, a murky swarming cloud that has arisen upon the tidal withdrawal of the fractal sea. The emergent archons have shed their earlier appearance as if it were merely a carapace, the chrysalis of an insect, and indeed, the dark, keening mass that now appears is an insect-like horde. The archons have morphed into a swarm of celestial locusts. The swarm surges aggressively, without sense or order, constantly emitting the shrill, metallic sound. Sophia cannot behold this event indifferently. She cannot ignore or avoid the assault directed upon her by a force field totally alien to her aeonic awareness. It poses a monumental distraction, pulling her attention away from M42. How can she act to quell the horrific commotion? Continued observation reveals that this aberrant species has no informing intelligence and no will of its own. The archons lack creative intelligence, nous, and enoia, intention. Their mental field is frantic and fractious. Nevertheless, they do exhibit evidence of hive mind mentality. Thus, they do possess a collective field of attention. This attribute presents the Aeon with an opportunity to control them. Sophia seizes the attention of the swarm and takes command of it for an instant. By her aeonic power of pronoia, she discharges a spark of intelligence into the archon hive mind. She lends to the archons what they do not innately possess, the capacity inherent to all that is truly alive, autopoiesis, self-organization. This action is provisional, for she realizes they will not know what to do with such intelligence. No matter about that, for she already conceives a second tactic to manage this pestilent intrusion. What she does next is a masterful feat of manipulation. The archons lack the ability to create or construct, but Sophia keenly observes that they are not entirely devoid of skill or instinct. Their behavior shows that they do possess one outstanding capacity: to imitate. The archons are a mimetic species. Each entity in the swarm does exactly what the others do. Sophia sees how she can turn this behavior to her advantage. Having received a vicarious dose of aeonic intelligence, the archons can now be steered on a course of activity. The aim is simple: occupy their attention and distract them from distracting her. The tactic is also simple: give them something to do with their borrowed intelligence. Again, by application of pronoia, the wisdom goddess projects into the hive mind the image of the cymatic designs in the pleroma, glorious patterns of beauty and symmetry. In the galactic core, torrents of divine luminosity dance in perpetual motion, blending and separating in kaleidoscopic pulsations of superlife. Sophia provides the archons with that splendorous display to imitate. Immediately, the celestial locusts converge upon their primary activity, mimesis. they engage the spark of creative intelligence lent by Sophia to replicate what she reveals to them. The tactic works. It rids Sophia of the vexation they imposed on her field of attention. The archons are still in proximity, but she can now proceed to face her situation free of that bizarre intrusion. The wisdom goddess turns her attention to the anthropic template nested in the nebula of Orion like a newborn in a cradle. Immeasurable ages are merely days in the life of the Aeon Sophia. She dwells at length on the site of the Anthropos, her designer species. Doing so, she regains composure. Her torrential substance recovers from the shock of impact. Now she can enjoy a measure of innate harmony. Her serpentine currents now tend to collect in a whirlpool. Conforming to the thinness of the galactic arm, the whirlpool flattens. It gradually closes upon itself, allowing the Aeon to collect and conserve the full array of her aeonic life forces and capacities. Settling into poise, Sophia assumes the shape of the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. Now, finally, she can turn her attention to the Anthropos template embedded in M42. Thus, the Aeon secures her territory in the galactic arms, free to consider what to do next. But her situation is not as secure as it might appear. The distraction given to the archons is not a passive event. Sophia's tactic invested them with the semblance of creative ability as a ploy to engage their mimetic powers. What she could not foresee is how intently and extensively they would exploit that brilliant plot. For the archons are an aberrant species that arose without a habitat, but now they can construct one. To do so, they replicate the living fractal patterns of the pleroma in a non-living construction, a simulacrum. What they thus construct provides them with a habitat in the shadowy region of the galactic arms. The simulacrum of the archons is the stereoma, a clockwork cosmos constructed of inorganic parts that amass into planetary orbs. They mine the daima for the raw materials to devise their own habitat. The result is a lifeless mechanism that mimics the pleromic designs Sophia revealed to them. It is a stereographic projection of the cymatic beauty of the aeonic dimension, absent the innate properties of life. The stereoma is an inorganic planetary system. For the archons, it is like a theme park suited to their character. Unable to support water, an atmosphere, land, and living organisms, it cannot be the setting for an aeonic experiment with organic life plans and natural designs. Its working parts simulate the numbering of aeonic proportions, divine geometry, a carousel of 6 inorganic bodies in flat orbits. The stereoma is jointed on a circle of pivots balanced on a 7th point, forming a hexagon. At the center of the stereoma is the dwell point of the entire construction, the planet Saturn. For Sophia, the archons are no longer a demanding intrusion. Their world system hovers in her proximity, enclosed by the Ouroboros form she has assumed. She registers the presence of the stereoma as a minute fleck, like a floater, in the field of vision. It is distinctly a foreign deposit alien to her aeonic sensibility. It is a mechanical monstrosity, unseemly and clunky, ugly by aeonic standards of beauty. But at least it gets that swarm of locusts out of her way. The archons no longer distract her from contemplating the molecular cloud in Orion M42, where the Anthropos template hovers like a pattern of dew on a spider's web. So close, just offside the boundary of her rotating serpentine vortex, the Ouroboros. The sight of it is immensely attractive. It inspires the fallen goddess to turn her attention fully to what she loves, the product of her own creative genius. Yet Sophia cannot dismiss the impression that the floater is somehow menacing, even sinister. Expansion. An outstanding line in the Gnostic writings says, "The world system as you know it came about due to a mistake." Mistake can also be translated anomaly, transgression, boundary violation, or exception. This statement is without question one of the outstanding features of the fallen goddess scenario. Nothing comparable to it can be found in any other cosmology from any culture or race. Interpretation: the planetary system inhabited by the human species is an anomaly in the cosmic order due to a unique and specific event, namely the plunge of the Aeon Sophia laterally across the galactic limbs. The inadvertent effect of this plunge is the generation of the archons, as it is called in Gnostic jargon, and the plot thickens as the narrative will reveal. The Saturn-centered planetary habitat constructed by the archons is not the solar system where the Earth is located today. Every detail of Sophianic cosmology can be verified or corroborated by the results of genuine investigation in astrophysics, but only genuine investigation, not quantum physics, relativity theory, string theory, holographic theory, or such pseudosciences which are totally infected with specious and unverifiable claims. EU plasma cosmology comes closest to the type of genuine, verifiable astrophysics that can complement Sophianic cosmology. Sophia's impact zone will be expanded upon using the Mandelbrot set at the conclusion of this episode. The substance of aeonic luminosity is alive or superalive, sentient, self-aware, and possessing abilities comparable to those seen in all kingdoms of living creatures. The assertion of a God-level type of thinking, discernment, emotive response, and cognitive ability, the capacity to act by intention, is not a matter of faith in Sophianic cosmology. It is a working hypothesis based on the premise that the super-living, supernatural matrix of life must contain and exhibit all the properties that are evident in the spectrum of living forms. This is a premise to be tested, not accepted on blind faith. Sophia's two-step tactic for handling the archons: first, endow them with a fractional spark of creative intelligence, nous, and then present them with a model to mimic, as replication is their innate faculty. Likewise, AI devices can replicate processes programmed for them by humans, even though they have no ability to originate such processes. The archons present the cosmic prototype of AI, artificial intelligence. AI in the world today is an archontic medium. However, the concept of artificial intelligence is erroneous and misleading. Life is intelligent. Otherwise said, intelligence is the basic property of living forms, from microbes to blue whales and everything in between. By the Gnostic standard, intelligence is exclusively the property of living organic creatures. AI mimics living intelligence, but it is neither alive nor organic. It is an inorganic mental system that can, but only in limited and stilted ways, mimic organic intelligence. It might better be designated MI, mimetic intelligence. Artificial intelligence as such does not exist. All that is alive is intelligent, and all that is truly intelligence is alive. That also is a perfect refutation of the hive mind of the archons. Gnostic cosmology describes the stereoma as a kind of theme park construction, the Disney world of the archons. It is not an immaterial construct like a hologram with no material basis except what is required for its projection as a standing image. The stereoma is constructed of material mined from the daema of the galactic arms, It is an inorganic planetary system based on a module of 6 orbs and a centre point, Saturn. Episode 5 describes the Aeon Sophia assuming the form of a whirlpool vortex, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. The location of this vortex is precise and can be observed today, although the vortex itself is no longer there, of course. Its location was in close proximity to the Orion Nebula in the third galactic arm. The Mandelbrot set. French mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot produced the set by plotting fractal iterations in a graphic display. This exercise is easily reproduced. The programmer feeds the computer a simple equation, then the computer feeds the result of that equation back into the original equation, and on to billions of repeats or iterations. The fractal patterns thus generated are not alive, not organic, nor are they the cause of fractal patterns that exist in nature. CGI fractals are archontic. Fractality in nature is organic. The obvious difference can be seen by comparing a detail of the set to a plant, the fiddlehead fern, for example. Fortunately, or better said, fortuitously, the CGI of the Mandelbrot set presents an exact image of Sophia's impact zone in the galactic arms. As an aeon, Sophia has a force body permeated with the superliving, supernatural currents that operate fractally. Her innate nature is autopoietic, self-organizing. Consequently, when she impacts the elementary field of the Daima, it aggravates into a lifeless semblance of fractality. Computer simulation is ideal for illustrating the cosmic event of the generation of the archons, because the archons themselves are an inorganic, AI-minded species. In other words, the medium fits the event to be illustrated. Summary. Episode 5 stands at the midpoint of the 9-episode narrative.